Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome if you're new to the channel as well, and to the second episode of what is this series where I'm ranking every single game that I've ever played in my life. So in the last episode we looked at the Mega Drive, and in this episode we're actually not just doing the one console, we're doing two consoles. And the reason for that is because, as you'll see, the consoles that I'm looking at, I've actually played relatively few games on there. So I don't want the video to be like really short, so I thought I'd merge two together, and then there's a little bit more content there, so we're going to do the two of them together. But aside from that, everything's just going to work exactly the same, ranking them from outstanding to don't remember, and also there's an option there for barely played. And yeah, if you're new, make sure you keep watching and consider subscribing if you want to see the future episodes. And yeah, let's get into it. So the first one we've got here is Bugs Bunny and Taz Time Busters. Now this is one of two Looney Tunes games that I've got on the PlayStation 1 in this episode, and I do remember them both, and I did play a lot of them, so I don't feel like I could put them in either of these two categories. However, it was so long ago, and this is again an issue that I probably have for the next couple episodes, but there's so many games that I don't remember because this was so long ago, but I do remember them somewhat. So I think because I did play it quite a lot and the actual gameplay was fun, and you're using characters that are actually well known, and you kind of utilize their own abilities in their own ways, from what I remember, I would say it was a good game. Like, it was quite fun, and it's kind of a typical PlayStation 1 game in the sense that it's gone on from where we were before with the Mega Drive. That was all 2D side scrollers, and now going into PlayStation 1 everything starts to become 3D collectathons, right? So it has the 3D environment, and then you're using those characters to go and collect carrots or gems, whatever we're going to cover in the other games as well. But for what it is, this one was definitely a good game, absolutely. Crash Bandicoot, I don't think I really need to say anything about this one. It's just an outstanding game, isn't it? I mean, first of all, it's one of the most famous games ever, especially of this generation, and the fact that it's been referenced so much in other games and been remastered or remade, however you want to call it, for the Insane trilogy. It's a generation-defining game. There's no two ways about it. There's nowhere else I would put that. So yeah, easy peasy. Okay, we've got Driver 1 and 2 now as well. I'll do Driver first because it makes sense to do it numerically. And this, I think I always played Driver 2 way more than Driver 1, so I'll remember that slightly more. First Driver, yeah, I don't remember it, to be honest, and I think there's not a huge distinction between the two of them. But Driver 2, I would say there was enough more stuff in it that I remember to make me not put it in don't remember. For example, like, I think you go to a mission in Havana and you can find a really cool secret car in there where it's like one of these old-fashioned American type cars, and then you can go to whatever other city it is and find a Mini Cooper in like a stadium or something. So I would put this one in okay, because other than the driving, which is in the name, Driver, there's not much to it. You do drive around, you can find secrets and stuff and complete the missions, but compared to later entries in the series, that's as high as I would be comfortable to put it. And then GTA 2 is the next one, and of course again GTA, it comes from, and actually wait, hang on, let's do the same thing. GTA 1 and 2 is here, so I'll do GTA 1 first. And it's a very similar thing with Driver, how I've played them both, but the distinction between them is quite minimal. I'm fairly sure I played GTA 2 a lot more than I played GTA. So again, I'm going to put GTA and don't remember, and I'm going to put GTA 2, even though it's very similar in the kind of setup of it as Driver. I'm going to put GTA 2 in good instead of okay, because I definitely had a lot more fun playing it, and you can't deny that the fact that these games then spawned off into GTA 3, Vice City, San Andreas, etc, etc. I think this one is where it really started to come into that kind of popularity. So I'm mixing the two things there. I'm mixing the popular idea of it and my personal enjoyment of it. And then again, another kind of a sequel game and an original game. So Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone, from wherever you are. Now this is one that I do remember because it's quite famous in a way how you look back at it and the graphics are so bad and Hagrid looks really janky and awful, and PlayStation 1 hasn't necessarily aged well. But you can't deny that when Harry Potter games started coming out, it made perfect sense for them excuse me, to be fun, because everyone wants to be a wizard from the Harry Potter world. Everyone wants to be Harry Potter, and it definitely encapsulates that. It absolutely does. So I will put this in good, and the reason I'm putting that in good is because I'm putting Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets in great, and the reason I'm putting the second one in great is just because it's a much better game. You have the duel at Ron Weasley's farm, as well as flinging the what do you call it, like the little troll things. I can't remember what they are. And then the actual gameplay going on, again, it just improves a lot more than the first one. So it makes sense to put it in great as far as I'm concerned. Hercules was one that I played for the first time, and I think the only time, around when we went round the house of like a family friends, and their child had a PlayStation 1 and a copy of Hercules. And I think I must have only played it for about half an hour, or at least maybe that's what I remember playing of it, is a very short amount, like literally not even an hour. So I'm going to have to put it on barely played, unfortunately. Hogs of War is one that, when I look back on it, I realise just how much of a kind of Worms rip-off it is, except it went 3D before Worms, I believe. But it's a pretty poor game. Not really fun to me. It's not. There's no real like levels to it. I don't remember. Like, it's just kind of plain hills and fields with no real textures, and the gameplay is quite boring, and the characters are not that interesting, especially when they are kind of a rip-off of Worms. So I do have to put it in poor. I can't say it's awful, because it's not like a broken or just so bad it's unplayable. But yeah, poor game. And then we've got another Rockstar games here. Now, a lot of people may not even know about this, but the Italian Job on the PS1 is a Rockstar game. And to be honest, although it's not a very well-known one, I have to say this is quite a solid game. And for a game that's based off of a film that came out probably 30 years maybe before the game came out, I wouldn't put money on it how long ago, but after the film it was. But there was some really cool stuff in it you could do. So obviously you got the famous, driving the minis around. I think you drive around London, because I know that you drive them over like stunts over, like there's like a stadium you can drive them over, and you can do jumps over, I don't know, rivers and stuff like this. As well as doing the just ordinary missions like picking someone up, dropping them off somewhere else. And in a way, very similar to Driver, but a lot more fun than Driver. And a lot more fun than Driver 2, so I would put it in good for that reason. This one always creeps me out, because I don't understand really what the character is meant to be. It's like a kind of really weird looking court jester looking magician thing. It's kind of like a really creepy person. And the gameplay was quite boring and uninteresting and forgettable. And so for that reason, it's just, I don't remember it. All I remember is this character, in the sort of weird suit, and it kind of creeped me out a little bit. So yeah, that's all I can say about it. And then we're coming now as well to the other Bugs Bunny game that I mentioned. I don't really know why they're so separate on this list, because they should be alphabetical order. But anyway, Bugs Bunny Lost in Time. I remember this maybe about the same amount as I remember Bugs Bunny and Taz. But I do remember it being, I think, better. Or at least trying to play it more. And so it's hard really for me to define it. Great. No, I think I'll play it safe. I think I'll play it safe. I'll put it in good, because it's very similar, the two games, and I remember them about as equally, even though I think I had more fun on Lost in Time. But these were two really good games. I mean, if you've ever played them, hopefully you'll know what I'm talking about. Eminem's Shell Shocked. It's only really recently when I decided to do this and was doing the research for the for doing this video that this game, Eminem's Shell Shocked, is basically like a legitimate, well, I say legitimate, an exact rip-off of Crash Bandicoot. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because Crash Bandicoot, of course, is fun, and I think everyone knows and quite likes the two Eminem characters. Like, they're still quite popular, they're still used in advertising and stuff. So it must be popular enough for people not to hate it. And I remember quite enjoying the game because, again, it's kind of, this 3D platformer, very, very similar to Crash. But it's not quite as good because obviously it is stealing from an iconic game. So I don't want to put everything in good because this column's going to end up being really long. I'm going to put it in okay because I do think that putting it in good is a bit generous for a game that is kind of a rip-off. This one is, Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX. Now, we do have a Tony Hawk game coming up in the list. And of course, Tony Hawk games are far more famous than Matt Hoffman games. I don't think they ever really made any more Matt Hoffman games after PlayStation 1. But I actually think I enjoyed Matt Hoffman Pro BMX more than I enjoyed Tony Hawk's. I don't really know why. They're basically identical. It's just one you're on a BMX and one you're on a skateboard. And I think a lot of it has to do with the soundtrack because these games, they're more, well, I say more famous, they're very famous as well for their brilliant soundtracks, which in the 90s, it was a lot of pop punk, kind of more metal style music. I mean, maybe there was some new metal in there as well. Don't quite remember, but there was some really good music. So I'm going to put this one in great because I played a lot, really enjoyed the hell out of it, and I think personally it's better than Tony Hawk. Personally. Well, not necessarily better than the later Tony Hawk games like American Wasteland and Underground, but we'll come to that when we come to the PlayStation 2. Medal of Honor. Now, it's one that it's tricky for me because this is the first PlayStation 1 game I ever played, and I definitely really enjoyed it. I played it a lot. However, the movement on it is so awkward that it really makes it difficult for me to want to put it in outstanding, even though I really, really loved it. And the reason I loved it is because it's kind of more of a war game where you're more sneaking around than actually going full guns blazing. And I think the reason for that is because the game utilizes more of like tank controls, where say you want to move forward, you would press forward on the D-pad, or maybe the stick if you're able to use it at that point. But if you wanted to turn left or right, you would use the left and right directional buttons. You wouldn't use the right analog sticks. So for example, if I was walking forward and I needed to turn a corner, I would then have to press right if the corner was going right, and then press forward to move forward. It was very, very awkward and difficult to get used to. And then to aim at a target, you could either, I think, shoot from the hip, or you'd have to stand completely still and then use one of the bumper buttons to actually get your reticle up in order to shoot them accurately. So it was very, very awkward. So that kind of reduces the rate for me. But apart from the movement, I really, really enjoyed it. It's a very good game, and it did spawn off, a series of games that were mostly good until the newer ones. They're kind of rubbish, but the newer ones were definitely, pretty decent. So I will put it in great, just for me personally. Monsters Inc. I played this around a friend's house, and I believe it was their birthday, and that's why I was around their house. And so we started playing Monsters Inc. And I was around their house for quite a few hours, and I remember that we pretty much beat the entire game because PlayStation 1 games were not that long necessarily. They've only got so much disk space. You could only program so much, especially into this world that they're coming into of 3D environments. And so we beat this very quick. Within, I think, probably 4 hours, we managed to get through it. And yet, saying that, I just don't remember it at all. I do not really remember it because, again, it was so long ago, and I think because we played it one time in that one sitting, that meant that it was just like it went out my head straight away. Whereas all these other ones, where I remember them more, I played them a good few times, for long times as well. So yeah, unfortunately Monsters Inc. I don't remember. Simpsons Wrestling. Not necessarily the first choice of many people for a Simpsons game. Certainly not everyone's favourite. We all know what that is, and again, we'll come to that in the PlayStation 2 video when we get there. But despite that, it is a really fun game. It is quite a strange one because you can take control of different characters from the Simpsons world and use special abilities that they each have, and it's a really fun time. So for example, you might have Ned Flanders, who he can pray to God and bring down a bolt of lightning and do damage to you that way. Or Marge Simpson, I think, I've got a feeling you can utilise Maggie in some way, or you use like a frying pan or something like that. But anyway, yeah, and Willie as well. He was a really fun one because you can use like rakes and stuff like that, because obviously he's a groundskeeper. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to release that. So for me, I would say it's a great game. Really enjoyed it. Played it a lot. And oh, by the way, I should probably mention most of these games I actually had. I played them because they were pirate copies, not legit copies. So I remember having this on a disc and literally was scribbled on the disc, Simpsons Wrestling. But yeah, great game. Really good. Now, if you watched my last video, you might remember that I said that they started making superhero games way too early, in my opinion, when it comes to when it was looking at the Mega Drive and SNES and things like that. I think they started making superhero games way too early because you can't properly utilise their abilities in a way that's really fun. However, when we get now to PlayStation 1, it becomes a 3D environment, so that starts making more sense. They've been able to incorporate these really cool characters like Spider-Man, Catwoman, Venom, maybe Carnage as well. I can't quite remember in the first Spider-Man game. But you can actually use Spider-Man's powers, so you can actually web people up, crawl up buildings, obviously hand-to-hand combat, and all that kind of stuff. And although again it's still not quite as advanced as we maybe would like it, I definitely think that it was at a point where it was like, okay, this is starting to make sense. This is starting to actually work properly. And because of that, I would say it's a great game. Really is. There's nothing else I can say about it. Now Spyro, yeah, I mean, I think everyone would be very angry at me if I didn't put this in outstanding straight away. And the reason for that, of course, it's an all-time classic. It's one of the generation-defining games, as well as Crash, and in very similar style to Crash, it's spawned off quite a few other games. It's been remade recently, and it's still very fun to this day. Even though again we're in a world where, in this point in time, the PlayStation 1, where everything's a 3D collectathon, and that's no different. However, the ability to save dragons with your breath, collect gems, which is very fun, and just the idea of being a dragon where you can glide around, stuff like that, it's very fun. So yeah, it has to be outstanding. Nothing else I can say about it. And I know I keep saying that, by the way. There's nothing else I can say about it, but there really isn't. Just straight away. Stuart Little 2. I could put it in Don't Remember. I could put it in Barely Played. However, I'm going to put it in Awful, because as a licensed game, that's sort of against it at this point in time. It's not really until PlayStation 2 where I think licensed games really start to become, ones that you could be like, wow, those are great. But the way it tries to cash in on the 3D collectathon side of PlayStation 1 games, it doesn't really succeed in any way. And using Stuart Little as a vehicle for that, I don't think makes a lot of sense, because I don't think those films were essentially like super popular, and so the game was even less popular. Although I did have it and play it, but never really grabbed my attention or anything like that. It was really boring. And I think that's the main thing for Awful, is obviously if a game's broken or whatever, it'll be awful, but the worst thing that a game can ever be is boring. That's the bottom line. There is nothing worse for a game to be than boring, because that's the whole point of games, is to entertain and be fun. and that's definitely not what Stuart Little 2 is. Now we get into Tony Hawk's, like I mentioned a minute ago. This is Tony Hawk's 3. I know everyone really loves Tony Hawk's 2, but for me, I think it was 3 was the only one that I actually really played, and I remember it a decent amount, but not enough to rank it highly amongst any of these other ones. So yeah, I'm going to have to unfortunately put it in Don't Remember. And I certainly didn't play it as much as Matt Hoffman's, so yeah, I couldn't put it up that far, definitely not. Treasure Planet, again, as well as all of these really. 3D Collectathon, a licensed game like Stuart Little. However, this is an exception because Treasure Planet on the PlayStation 1 was actually bloody fantastic. It was really colourful, it was really fun, the collectibles were good, you could actually interact with that little morph character, like the pink blob from the film. And that was, obviously he's a really cute little character. So for me, purely based on nostalgia, I guess, as well as the actual quality of the game, it's going in great. Yeah, it's a great game. And then finally, on the PS1 side of it, 007, The World Is Not Enough. Again, another licensed game, a James Bond game. And this was definitely the first James Bond game I ever played, although I've not admittedly played many at all. But I know that this game it incorporated scenes from the film as well to tell the story through the missions. So when you're going through the missions, like for example, there's a bit where you get a gadget like a grappling hook and you can grapple onto, I think, this hot air balloon or something, and then once you've done that mission, it transitions into that scene from the film or whatever scene would be relevant. And I do have one particular memory of this game which was always really funny to me, how there is a casino level, and I'm sure it's this game, maybe because it's the only one we had, it can't be any other James Bond game, but there's a level in it where you're in a casino, and I think you have to earn a certain amount of money in order to gain the attention of the owner of the hotel in order to infiltrate it. And me and my brother, we realised there was the way they've programmed it is that you're not actually gambling, because the more money that you put on the table, the more likely you are to win. And so because of this, what we kept doing is just every time you went to the table, we would gamble every single coin or bit of money that we had, and every single time we would win. And over the course of a few hours, we ended up racking up billions and billions of pounds or dollars, whatever it was. And that was always really, really fun to do. So I think I'm going to put it in great for that. Yeah, a lot of good memories with it. So yeah, I'm going to recap this one really quickly before we go into the next category, which will be the Game Boy Color. So, outstanding, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro. There's no arguments there, surely. Surely you can't disagree with that. I mean, they are the two most, I would say, generation or console-defining game of the PlayStation 1, really. And I'd probably rank them in that order. I prefer Crash to Spyro, I think, but that's purely because I've played it more. It's not to say that I don't enjoy Spyro, because I really do, obviously, but it is what it is. And then great, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I think it is a classic game for the PlayStation 1. A lot of people played it and enjoyed it. Matt Hoffman's was great. Yeah, Medal of Honor. Yeah, of course. Simpsons Wrestling, not necessarily an obvious one, or one that really many people played necessarily, but it is fantastic anyway. Spider-Man, it is more of a classic one. A lot of people did play it, and it is where superhero games started to come into their own. Treasure Planet, it was fantastic, mostly because of how well it utilised the 3D collectathon side of things and the platforming, but also because that was a really fun and interesting world to be in, was Treasure Planet, because the film's obviously really good as well. And then The World Is Not Enough, so yeah, James Bond game, good use of gadgets, good use of levels, ties in well with the film as well, so yeah, that is great. Good, Bugs Bunny and Taz, yeah, that is a good game. GTA 2, maybe you disagree with me on this one, maybe you enjoy it more, but I didn't play it loads and loads, so it's not quite as nostalgic to me, but it is still a good game in my opinion. Harry Potter, Philosopher's Stone, yeah, it's just unfortunately not as good as Chamber of Secrets, so that's why it's in good more than anything. Italian Job, solid Rockstar game, improves on the Driver style of gameplay, and just has some really cool fun moments in it, so yeah. And then Bugs Bunny, Lost in Time, similar with Time Busters, I can't put a real. Oh, sorry, I can't really put like a big distinction on between the two of them, so I'll put them in the same bracket just for the sake of it. And then OK, Driver 2, yeah, it is okay. I can't really rank it better than that, especially compared to later entries. Eminem Shell Shock, like I said, just a rip-off of Crash. Poor, Hogs of War, yeah, very boring. And then Awful, Stuart Little 2, that is really boring. Barely played Hercules, maybe it's better than I could, I could rank it a lot higher, but yeah, unfortunately I only played it for maybe a few hours around a friend's house. And then, don't remember the first Driver, again, this is purely because I don't really know or remember the difference between Driver 1 and 2. The one I really remember is Driver 2, so I would have to unfortunately just say I don't remember it. GTA 1 is a very, pretty much the same thing as Driver. I don't remember it that much different from GTA 2, so unfortunately I can't put it in anywhere else. Jinx, yeah, I don't remember it really at all, except the actual character itself. Monsters Inc., like I say, completed it in a few hours, don't remember it at all. And then Tony Hawk's, I think the trouble is more because the games are all very similar, 1, 2 and 3, that I can't remember it enough to say amongst all these other ones how good it was. So yeah, that's the PlayStation 1. Hopefully it's not too controversial for you, but I think there's some good choices in there. And then get over to Game Boy Color and see what I mean. Game Boy Color, I only played like 6 or 7 games here, so there's no point to do just the PlayStation 1 and then have a video just for the Game Boy, because one will be 20 minutes or however long it is, and this one would end up being like 2 minutes. So and again, straight away, first two we have off, 2 Harry Potter games, Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, and these two again are very, very similar, very similar. And oh, by the way, this says Game Boy Advance on the side. I don't know why it says that, and maybe I just chose the wrong image, but it's Game Boy Color. I'm going to do a separate one on Game Boy Advance games, obviously. But these two are very, very similar games, pretty much the same game, just with the story, copy and pasted in from the films into the game. It's just the kind of background that's different. The actual gameplay itself is very, very similar. But I did enjoy them both an awful lot, so I'm going to put them both in great. Really, really enjoyed them. And there's more Harry Potter games to come in the future episodes, so we'll see how they compare. The Jungle Book, I do remember playing it a lot, but I never really got past maybe the first or second level, because there was a lot of time-based puzzles in it, and at the age I was when I was doing this, so maybe like 4 or 5 at the most. Obviously, I just wasn't dexterous enough to be able to do that, and so I didn't quite enjoy it as much as I wanted to. So I'm just going to put it in okay, unfortunately. Pokemon Silver, again, similar to Crash in that instantly goes in outstanding. And the reason for that, first of all, it's one of the best Pokemon games ever made was Gold and Silver. I'm putting Silver just because that was the one that I played rather than Gold. But this was the first Pokemon game I ever played, so it's very meaningful to me in that way. The actual game itself is fantastic, especially going onto the Game Boy Color. And the 2 legendary Pokemon are brilliant, really good designs, really powerful Pokemon in their own right. And yeah, not only was it for the first Pokemon game I ever played, it was the first Game Boy Color game I ever played as well, so it's sort of double meaningful for that. Yeah, outstanding game, and when we get to future Pokemon games, they're not all going to be like that, because most Pokemon games actually love to death, but this one, for the first one, definitely deserves to be out there. Robot Wars, probably not many of you have played really at all, and it was kind of enjoyable for what it was, but there wasn't much to it other than just making your robot and pushing them into pits and whatever. I mean, it is a Robot Wars game, that's all it is. So I'm just going to put it straight in okay. Shrek, I think it's called Fairy Tale Beatdown or something, I can't quite see it, and I forget the subtitles all the time for these older games. And this is kind of a similar thing to The Simpsons Wrestling, where you wouldn't necessarily expect it. You wouldn't necessarily think, oh, Shrek, that makes sense to do like a sort of side-scrolling fighting game, even though there's a lot of fighting in Shrek. But actually it plays really well, and the different characters you can unlock and the different ones you can fight really made the game interesting, and yeah, similar to The Simpsons Wrestling. I think they do all have their own unique powers as well. So I'm going to put it in good, just because it was really well utilised how they did it in that style. And finally, on the Game Boy 1, Game Boy One, on the Game Boy Color, I should say. And for this video, the Thunderbirds game. And I think it's just going to have to be an okay one, because although I really love the idea of taking control of different Thunderbirds, because they're all different in their own way and you can utilize them differently, they kind of break down to be different in the sense of how they actually move. So for example, Thunderbird, is it Thunderbird 4 or 5, the one that goes underwater? It's like side-scrolling, and it's kind of in ways reminiscent of Echo the Dolphin. And then Thunderbird 1, it's like playing Space Invaders, except the screen keeps going up, so it's like one of those games where you just keep shooting upwards, and then you get to the end of the level. And then Thunderbird 2, it's like an isometric style game where you're looking down to the ground and you just see the top of it, and you're trying to, I don't know what it is you need to do with Thunderbird 2, but anyway, it's not really that exciting, and I remember it probably more fondly than it actually is. So I'm not going to risk putting it in good, because I don't think it really is that good a game, but it's okay. Yeah. And that's the whole list for Game Boy Color. Again, outstanding Pokemon Silver. Again, similar with the PS1, you can't argue with that, surely. Harry Potter's 1 and 2, they're very much the same game, but with a different story plopped in. But they are both very, very enjoyable, so both great. Shrek, yeah, it is a good game, definitely a lot of fun, and if you did play it, hopefully you'll know just how fun it was. And then Jungle Book, Robot Wars, Thunderbirds, yeah, even just looking at them and reading the names, I'm just like, yeah, they're okay. Nothing here, and there's nothing here that I barely remember or anything, there's nothing here that's awful, so just these 4 first options. And yeah, so that'll do it for this episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, because this episode I've tried something different where I'm putting the actual footage of these games in as well, to kind of get across what the games actually are, or at least if you've never played it, you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. And yeah, like I said, this is the second episode as well. A lot more to come in the future. So subscribe if you want to keep up on the future episodes. There's some really good games and generations coming up, so I definitely recommend it. But yeah, that's it from me for this episode. Hopefully I'll see you next week, and until then, take care of yourselves, stay healthy, and yeah, see you later.